Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending this evening's Town of Amherst Traffic Safety Board meeting. Today is November 5th, 2025. Our first order of business this evening is just an introduction of ourselves. I am Eric Frost, Chairman, and who will start on this side of the table today?
Cynthia Sullivan, Vice Chairman.
Maxwell Khan, chair or member. Geez. Oh, what's
Dan Ryder, member.
Kara Biddlecom, member.
Patricia Dunn, member.
Charles Persons, Police Department.
Scott Marshall, planning liaison.
Chris Terrego, Engineering Department, Traffic Safety Coordinator.
Mike Sukala, Town Board Member and Liaison to the Committee.
So our first order of business, well, first thing this evening is just some housekeeping here that should an alarm sound in the building, just so everyone is aware, emergency exit ours is to my left, your right, exit out the two doors to that side, and proceed to the front or the rear of the building. With that, we will move to our first thing that we need to address is the minutes from the October 8th meeting, which was last month's meeting. Are there any comments, corrections, or changes that need to be made to the minutes before we approve them? None being heard, I will make a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
That's a second from Kara. Any further comments? None being heard, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion carried 6-0. Okay, for those that are in the audience this evening, if you haven't been here in the past, just so you are aware, this meeting is being live streamed at the same time, so we will ask you when you come up to the podium to speak for your agenda item, that you speak into the microphone at the podium. That way the people that are watching online through the live stream are able to hear what you're saying, and that also captures everything for the minutes of the meeting that we just approved from the last meeting. With that, I will also just say that when you come up to the podium, we already received a copy of all of your correspondence with the town. Therefore, when you come up, you don't need to repeat anything that you've already had in correspondence with the town. We all have copy of that and are aware of that. When you come up to the podium, you'll be granted 3 minutes to speak during the public comment period. After approximately 2.5 minutes, it looks like Dan has the clock tonight. Dan will give you a single ding of the bell to let you know you have about 30 seconds left. At that point, at 3 minutes, you'll receive a double ring of the bell letting you know that your time is up so that the next speaker can come in and speak. This board is a volunteer board. We are not a law-making board for the town. Depending on the actions of the items of your agenda item, it would be referred, if local law or changes are needed, it would be referred to Councilmember Zukala, which would then write up the resolution for that, which would then go before the town board for the legal actions to occur to take the action that is recommended by this board, should the town board so choose. We also have department liaisons from the town with us this evening. Those department liaisons, if it is items that are within their purview and does not require a change of local law, local ordinance, they can handle those within their individual departments to address those issues that are brought to their attention. With that, as we go through the agenda this evening, we do not go through the agenda in order. As it is printed, we go through the order of the agenda based on the way people are signed in on the agenda. After we go through those items, we will then go back through the agenda in the order of the agenda. That way, those that are here in the audience, we can get you on your way. However, if you are here and you would like to stay with us through the entire evening, you are more than welcome to do so. If you're interested in joining this board, we also have open seats. If you enjoy what you're hearing tonight, feel free to reach out to Councilmember Zukala. We're always looking for additional members so that we can fill the 10 seats that are on this board. As you can see, we only have 6 here this evening. With that, there are a couple issues that will come up through the agenda this evening. One of them will most likely be related to speed. Just so you are aware, the town at this current time does not have a ordinance or anything in place for speed bumps, speed humps, and speed tables like the city of Buffalo and other areas have. In order for those to be installed, there would need to be action taken by the town board. This board is in favor of those. However, we need pilot streets. We need areas where it can be implemented and put into place. And we need the town board in order to make that happen. We would also need approval from the different departments like the police department, fire departments, and highway departments related to snow removal in order to implement any of that. So that is still a work in process within the town in order to implement that should it move forward. When it comes to stop signs, just a reminder, stop signs, if you wish to speak about them tonight, just keep in the back of your head, stop signs are a traffic control device, not a speed control device. If that comes up tonight, we will get into that. And other than that, I think that covers, the other issue is this board is governed by the MUTCD, the Manual Uniform Traffic Control Devices issued by the federal government. This board is required to follow what's in the MUTCD. We may reference that, some of the guidelines, some of the warrants, some of the requirements to do things. We are bound to follow that. There are some exceptions to that within the guidelines of the book that we can follow. So that will be taken into consideration as we are making decisions this evening. So with that, our first person that we have signed in this evening is actually for item number 3. So I will turn it over to Chris for North French and Hopkins Road intersection, request for pedestrian accommodations. Chris will give us the background, then we will open it up for public comment, and then we will return it back to the board for discussion. Chris?
Thank you, Chairman. Item 3 is North French Hopkins intersection. The resident request and concerns brought forward is that the resident is requesting that North French and Hopkins have a pedestrian signal and crosswalks installed. That intersection is a town of Amherst signal at a county intersection, so any changes to the pedestrian accommodations does have to come from the town with the approval of the county. It has to be okayed by them. One of the justifications mentioned by the resident is that there are school children crossing, going to and from the school, and they cross this intersection, and it is currently unsafe. This is an aerial view of that intersection. You will note that sidewalks are on the northwest corner, but then, I think there are some on the south side of North French, but then do not continue along Hopkins to the south. There are no ramps, there are no ped heads. Each turn going through that intersection, it is heavily trafficked. If you just look at North French itself, 13,700 plus 18,200 equal approximately 32,000 vehicles traveling on North French, crossing over that intersection. This is a map of a sidewalk network. This map was originally developed to try to densify sidewalks in the vicinity of schools at a quarter mile, and that's what those circles indicate. Green indicates sidewalk. Anywhere that doesn't have green is unsidewalked. So you have that one on the the northwest corner, and then sporadically along the west side of Hopkins, but there is no continuation of sidewalk to either school. Taken from the intersection, it's about a half mile to Dodge Elementary, and then about 3/4 of a mile to the Casey Road Middle School / high school. We did perform a pedestrian count. It was a little chilly, so keep that in mind, but we tried to find a time period that might cover both the nearby elementary school as well as middle high. So we chose 2:15 to 3:15. That's pretty common to do 1 hour of pedestrian count. We did not count any pedestrians crossing that intersection. We then did just a small snippet, about 30 minutes during the Halloween evening at 6:15. Again, no pedestrians counted. When looking at crash data specific to pedestrians and bicyclists, there have been no reported accidents in the past 6 years, and that is between 2018 and 2024. With that, I'll pass it back over to the board.
Okay, so with that, we will open it up to public comment. The first person that we have signed in this evening is... What's that? Okay, come on up. When you come up to the microphone, if you can just state your name and address into the microphone and start to speak.
All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Eustace Mendez, and I live just about 100 yards away from that spot that's being discussed, and I've lived there since 1989. At the time when I moved there, there was hardly any, cars were few and both along North French and Hopkins. But as developments went in and the 990 went in, a lot of traffic now, instead of exiting on North French, they'll go up to the end of the 990 and then come down Hopkins. So the traffic has increased very much there. My fear there is that a lot of the kids, and I know you did the survey and didn't see a lot of kids, but a lot of kids do walk there, and kids, I guess, who play sports or stay after school, you usually see them coming up later, and they have to cross right there. And the traffic on North French, I can tell you, has magnified quite a lot in both directions, both perpendicular directions. And a lot of bicyclists also use it. I'm a bicyclist, so I kind of tend to notice, but I don't have to cross that. But I see a lot of people because they ride up there to get onto the bike path, going all the way up to Hopkins Road, which I do. So there's a significant bicycle traffic there, even though you may not have seen it. That's where my concern is. I worry about the little kids, especially the older ones, too, from the high school, but also from the middle school. You do see them walking there. So I know your survey. I'm an engineer, so I know we read survey and how we may draw a conclusion, but all you need is one accident, okay? So I will, with that, I'll appeal to, at least look into it very deeply before a decision.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have Kim Wyzakowski.
Hi, good evening. So I am here to back the pedestrian cross. We do have kids in the neighborhood. I know you mentioned that you didn't see a whole lot of pedestrians or children. I'm one of those parents that would not allow my child to bike to school no matter how much she is begged, just because the intersection is it's dangerous in my opinion. There's not a whole lot of side traffic there, so to not have a crosswalk and really no shoulder, that's what I'm going for. It's, I found it to be very dangerous. In addition, when there's no traffic that comes from north or south on Hopkins, the light doesn't change. So if you're a lone bicyclist and there's no traffic that's coming, you have to wait for traffic to come for the light to even change. So that's, kind of an additional issue at that intersection. And I will say additionally, while the speed limit is 35 for this area, I can tell you that most people do 45 through here. They continue 45 and thinking that there's, no change. And I have not seen a traffic light anywhere in Amherst that is run more than this. And I'm talking 1 to 3 cars almost every time I'm at that intersection run that red light. And I'm not talking pink or what we might consider orange. It's red. It's green for my side. It's been green. We've taught, wait 1 to 3 seconds. It's red. It's very red. So that's why I'm looking to have a pedestrian cross, just for increased safety. We also do have a lot of residents that go down to Billy Wilson, and the bike path that's by north, and this is the only way for us to travel down that way as well. And I don't know if this is an appropriate time to mention it, but if you are looking for a pilot street for speed bumps, we would also be willing. We are a cut-through street because we run from Hopkins to North French. So I thought I would just mention it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also signed in for this evening, we have, is it Mary? Mary Dorr.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for putting this on the agenda today. I stand before you today asking for your support of pedestrian safety features on the corners of North French and Hopkins in Gettsville. As a driver, I move cautiously on this intersection, knowing that cars drive so fast down North French. At times they run through the red lights, as my neighbor just commented, through the red light at speeds greater than 35 miles an hour. You can clock it. I'm worried for my elderly neighbors that walk on North French and Hopkins for exercise. They run. It's a little scary. I worry about them. And most importantly, and my prompt for being here today, I'm a concerned parent of children that walk home from school down Hopkins Road, crossing onto North French. 2 of my children will walk. One of them is terrified and won't do it. She says it's scary, and it is. With this intersection being less than a mile from 3 schools, as we've already seen today, the North and Casey campus on Hopkins and Dodge, and the Dodge Elementary School on North French and Dodge, this intersection is on the path for many children that willingly walk to and from school. That's a really healthy form of transportation that should be encouraged. And having this really scary intersection in a street with no sidewalks doesn't encourage that. Traffic volume on this intersection is heavy during peak times and will continue to increase with the residential development that's being built on the intersection of North French and Millersport. It's expected to be completed in the spring of '26. That's just going to make that intersection even more dangerous. Taking precautionary effort now will prevent a tragedy. And I hate to do this, but I'll remind you of Aaron's Crossing, which I'm sure you're familiar with. It was erected in front of Maple East after a 13-year-old child was unfortunately hit by a vehicle when crossing Maple Road, and she sadly died. Pedestrians deserve a level of protection that does not exist on Hopkins and North French. At minimum, a crosswalk, a signal, will signal to drivers that though no sidewalks exist, let's just be clear about that, there really are no sidewalks. They do share the road with walkers, runners, and bikers. Proactively implementing safety measures will protect pedestrians, will protect the community, reducing the risk of injuries and worse fatalities on that really heavily trafficked intersection. I implore you to recommend to the board to implement guardrails to protect our community members, my neighbors, my children, myself, on the North French and Hopkins intersection. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. And we have Lisa Ferraro.
Hi, my name is Lisa Ferraro. I live at 186 Daven Drive in Gettsville, right about that corner there. We hit North French and Hopkins. Yeah, right behind that little X, a little L-shaped street. So I'm a runner, a pedestrian, I'm a parent of school-age children, and that is a very dangerous intersection. And because there are no pedestrians there, because I will not allow my children to cross that street either. My daughter just said to me today, she's like, "Mom, well, if they put a crosswalk, will you allow me to cross?" I'm like, well, only if there's sidewalks that go along with it, because it's still dangerous. But the intersection, so I run that intersection, I'm a runner, like I run the intersection a lot, and when I go across from Hopkins and I cross the street into the other side of Hopkins from North French, going south it would be, then when I cross, it turns red, and then there's a green arrow that comes, people start turning left, and then people are turning right on red, so it's really hard to cross there. Like it's very fast light. There's cars turning left and right, and it's very dangerous. I do it because I have to get to the other side of the street sometimes, but it's a very dangerous intersection. Like you said, it's within half mile of Dodge, less than a mile of Will North and Casey Middle. There's a lot of children that walk in and out of that intersection. It would be nice if there was a sidewalk from going from Hopkins to North French from the school, a continuous sidewalk. It is not a continuous sidewalk at all. It goes from one side, and then it goes to the other side, and there's a break. There's no continuous side. And it would be great for children for safety. So a sidewalk and a crosswalk would be the best thing for that intersection. I think a goal for Amherst would make Amherst safe and make it pedestrian friendly. That's a big goal as me as a member of the community, and I hope Amherst would have that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to speak on this agenda item? None being heard or seen, we will close the public comment period and open it up to the board for discussion. I'm happy to see that Chris opened up, I think, what he opened up here. There were numerous comments that were made during the conversation about signal running at the intersection. The town does have MyoVision, which is a camera, which is the control devices for the cameras and how those work, which I believe is what Chris is currently trying to pull up here. But the MyoVision cameras will also detect people that are running lights. I believe it has bike detection and pedestrian. If you can talk to that, Chris, of what MyoVision does, since you're the expert.
Yeah, sure. So we've got a camera at that intersection. It's continuously counting vehicles. That's where that turning movement count came from. That's also where we counted the pedestrians or lack thereof. But it also does metrics. They're called automated traffic performance measures. And one of those metrics that we can pull is red light running. I could try to do it on the fly here, but we could take a look at that after the meeting and report that to the police department if it's the board's pleasure. It can kind of narrow down, what times are the most egregious red light running. And so we can report that to the police department for a targeted enforcement.
So just a question on the MyoVision, Chris, with the comments that were made about the signal not changing if there's a person riding a bike. Does
Yeah,
it need to
that's-
have the ped head controls in there to do the pedestrian detection, or no?
So if it thinks you're a motorcycle, it will trip it. But it is supposed to be intelligent enough where it can tell the difference between motorcycles and bicycles. So, I mean, if you've got a fairly large e-bike, it might catch you as a motorcycle, thereby tripping the signal. These are the detection zones that you see, like currently someone's in that green spot. Here's a vehicle coming up. So it'll catch that person. So it depends. I'm not sure that it'll trip it every time, to answer your question.
Okay. The other thing is Chris is trying to work on some stuff here is one of the concerns that was mentioned by those that spoke this evening and would also become a concern of this board is the lack of sidewalks. In order to put in the crosswalk, you have to have landing pads and sidewalks for that crosswalk to lead to someplace. Right now, when we look at that intersection, there is on the northwest corner, we have a sidewalk, but there is no other sidewalk to connect a crosswalk to. So you could put a landing in at that particular corner, which currently does not have a landing there because you wouldn't put that landing in because there's no sidewalk to lead it to, which is why there is no landing on that sidewalk. So we would need another landing pad and another landing sidewalk in order to install the crosswalk. We can't put crosswalks to no place. Really, if you put the crosswalk in there, the crosswalk is there basically as an extension of the sidewalk network to allow that pedestrian to cross the street. And since we don't have a sidewalk network at that intersection, the only way to put in the crosswalk would first have the sidewalks existing in that vicinity in order to put the crosswalks in. So with that, I will open it up to the board for any further comments on this item. We don't have a talkative group up here this evening. They're going to let me do all the talking.
I'm okay with putting in sidewalks and put up the crosswalks necessary. I mean, we can talk about the ones where it would be logical. Probably that northeast one doesn't really make a ton of sense because that kind of goes through the woods, but I have no problem with any of the other three. I mean, I'm fine with that one too, but the only question would be, remember we ran across this with Brompton, is we just got to make sure, like, if there's a reason why the sidewalks aren't there, like if the elevation is fine. But assuming it is, I have no problem putting in sidewalks.
Right.
Frankly,
So,
we want to do it anyway.
yeah, and that would be what would have to happen
See, that one's
first.
gonna be tough. Like that's exactly what's going to
You
happen
wouldn't
there.
be able to put a sidewalk over in that area, so the sidewalk would have to go to the other side of the street, would be my assumption.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, which is where you get into the network of sidewalks crisscrossing throughout the street. That would have to be solved for, which would have to go to engineering. Chris, can you just go back to the sidewalk map because I do have another concern as well. So when we go to, so we do have, I'm looking at the intersection of Dodge and, nope, right there. So we do have crosswalks on all legs of that intersection for, I wouldn't want to put crosswalks in one intersection, get to another, next intersection up, but we do have sidewalk network through that intersection for connectivity up to the school.
And a crossing guard.
And a crossing guard, okay.
Then I think at this time the smartest move is refer to engineering to try to look in that direction, see which areas are feasible for sidewalk, and then put on crosswalks where we can have it on both sides of the road.
So, Chris, would that go to engineering or does that have to be submitted through sidewalk first?
So there's a sidewalk technical review committee that engineering is part of. We would just strictly look, the engineering would strictly look at the constructability, but planning would look at the connectivity. Highway would also look into it. So there's different departments that would ultimately review that application. So if you're going to refer it, I would suggest go right to the technical review committee. So somebody has to be an applicant who has standing. The board can act as the applicant, which you've done in the past, or the resident can also submit it on their behalf. It's treated the same exact way.
So does this board want to be the applicant on that to recommend for consideration of sidewalk, or would we like to refer that to the residents to submit? I believe if the residents submit, Chris, they'll get more comment back on it, won't they? Or doesn't it matter at this point?
Yeah, you're right. I think the communications would go back to this board, not directly to the residents.
Yep. So within the town's website, that's trying to remember where it is on the town website. So we can make the recommendation on your behalf, and we still can go and do that. And I think we're all in favor of doing that, but would recommend that you do that as well. That way, communication on the topics, reach out from the committee and everything would be your contact information for follow-up rather than this board, which would give you better communication coming back as to the status or how it's being considered and reviewed. That's why I wanted to bring that up.
So if you go to the town's website and you type in the word sidewalks in this keywords, it'll take you right to this sidewalks page, and there'll be a sidewalk installation request. Thank you. It'll go over spots where we're Campbell Boulevard. See, we'd have to look into this right here. Scott, do you know this by chance? Hopkins Road shows up as a spot that does not require sidewalks. So it's north of the site we're talking about? Okay. So then you fill out the application and submit it to wherever they tell you to, and then it'll follow the process. But from what I'm hearing, board, just so the minutes are accurate, you would entertain a recommendation to install pedestrian accommodations at that signal only if sidewalks were to move forward?
Yeah, I mean, we
Yeah.
can't put them in otherwise. But so I guess I would be recommending, and just for you guys to know, what you'd want to put in is from that intersection all the way to the elementary school and then to the high school, middle school, because that way it'll get all the directions. Both sides, yeah.
Yes, request both sides just because of the terrain that's in that area as well.
Yeah. And then from there, assuming we figure something out, then we can put in the sidewalks.
Okay, and then once the sidewalks are there, that would also then take into consideration the connectivity of those sidewalks with crosswalks through that intersection. Okay, so with that, is there any other comments on this
Yes.
item? Go ahead, Dan.
For a more immediate action, could we put a crossing guard out here for school hours?
No, It's not within a school zone. It's not in a close enough proximity to the school based on the circles that Chris had on the map.
Yeah, there's certain criteria for crossing guards, and this does not meet much of any of them.
We could refer to enforcement as well, just given the concerns that multiple residents had said about running the lights and so forth.
Okay, so this is the red light running data. Colors indicate yellow is the yellow light, red is the red light. So think of it, seconds are on the y-axis on the left. And time is on the bottom. So anything over that yellow line in terms of those little dots are red light runners. So looking at the most egregious ones, you know, you've got 7 seconds past, past when I think it's when it hits yellow, when it first starts hitting yellow. So it would be 3 seconds after it hits red. And that's typically is when you'd see the green go in the opposite direction. So, we would look for these spikes and tell the police department, yeah, like 12 o'clock looks bad in the westbound, 4 o'clock looks bad in the eastbound direction. Any questions on this?
Nope. So I will just refer that to Captain Parsons for potential enforcement in that intersection for red light runners. And if you need more information, Chris has it for
Yep.
peak times and hours.
And this was just yesterday, so election day. So maybe these people were hurrying to the polls.
So Chris will continue to look at this through MyoVision, through engineering, and provide information to the police department as to the hours. This is one day. I believe, Chris, you can pull it for a longer time period to get a better window of time.
Yeah, that's just one day.
One day. Okay.
Probably one bigger sample size.
Any other comments, questions on this agenda item? None being heard, we will close agenda item number 3 and thank the residents for attending this evening. The next agenda item we have somebody signed in for this evening is on the old business section, item D, which is Caesar Boulevard.
You can make a list. D, there.
And Chris, were you able to, you have
Yep, I
information
can-
on D?
Just put together something basic. Screen looks weird. All right, so the next one, it shouldn't say item 1. This is item D, Caesar Boulevard. Dead end turnaround expansion to accommodate school buses is the request. I'm gonna just kind of run through this because this is the third time you've seen this. But the location is Caesar Boulevard. That's just off of Main Street, fairly close to Clarence or Transit Road. And it is a no outlet road with a dead end north of Connie. And there is a pseudo turnaround now, kind of a dead end scenario. And the request is to expand that to then allow Clarence School District busing to allow a 3-point turn, which is currently allowed by Clarence to pick up school children who live on this north end of Caesar. Right now, they are walking to the intersection of Connie and Caesar. Following the last meeting, the planner, Scott Marshall, who's liaison to this board, provided me some information related to town code and what our requirements are for turnarounds. And they must meet Appendix D of the New York State Fire Code. They must allow adequate space for snow storage and emergency turning. The existing right-of-way, implications. Existing right-of-way prevent compliance with fire code geometry. That's the current one. And then also expanding pavement beyond a right-of-way would affect adjacent private property, and I'll show you that in a minute. So this is what the 2 scenarios are that are allowed in town code, a hammerhead situation and a kind of a sideways hammerhead. So when you take those exact dimensions and put them in CAD and overlay them on top of Caesar along with property lines, you run into a problem, and that's the lack of right-of-way. And this is private property. going in the northerly direction like that other one, you know, you're in two rear lots. So that's all I've really got to report today.
Okay, thank you, Chris. And then we will open it up to Dale. Would you like to speak?
Good evening, council members. My name is Dale Zaworski. I do live at 249 Caesar Boulevard, which was the house that was on the right-hand side of that hammerhead. Right now, there is a pseudo turnaround. It's just an L-shaped off of Caesar Boulevard. It's 72 feet across from just past that tree. I don't know, you can't see. Just left. There's one large tree that is in the right-of-way space that is available to be used for the town. With that, it might be, in which I've asked Mr. Schragle beforehand, to find out how much farther that distance that we already have there that is already paved, using that right-of-way space to come, come south on Caesar Boulevard, to expand that turnaround so that a bus could utilize that space, and for any other larger vehicle. As of right now, Amazon trucks, the garbage trucks, they all are backing into my side yard, the corner portion of it. But with that extra space, they would be allowed to have a much larger rectangular P-shaped turnaround. They can't do a full turnaround or full circle turnaround because Mr. Schragle has shown me beforehand that there's not enough space for that as well. But adding another potentially 14 feet south of what is already there would give the buses and any large vehicle more than enough space to turn around in that spot. Like I said, right now, there would be enough room to push the snow farther as that right-of-way continues to the west. They already do push the snow directly north on that far end below those blue spruces that are up there. And then they also push the snow directly west as well. So the space that would be utilized more of the right-of-way space that would be used more for the turnaround, the snow could adequately be pushed farther west in the right-of-way space without pushing it onto anybody's private property. So I still am advocating and hoping that it would be approved that this space, or at least further investigation of how much farther in that right-of-way space could be allocated for the bus to be turned around. Because right now, from the center of my driveway to Connie Lane is 550 feet. The safety walking distance for Clarence School kids is 500 feet. I know it's only 50 feet, but that's 10% more than what the safety allotment is for kids to be walking to a school bus stop. The only thing that really would, if that was allowed with the turnaround, is legitimately just having no parking signs in there, so the buses wouldn't have to have an issue of cars parked in that area during the mornings or during the afternoons, because right now there is no parking signs there at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on this item this evening? None being heard or seen, we'll close the public comment and open it up to the board for further discussion. So on this particular item, from the information that Chris provided as to what town code allows for the acceptable hammerheads, my understanding would therefore be that before we could make any further recommendations on this particular item, that would require a change in town code and change in local ordinance to change what's an acceptable hammerhead turnaround within the town. I think we received some additional drawings in our packet as well on making this into a cul-de-sac, which doesn't fit either for the bus turnaround. I mean, there's just a space constraint at the end of the day. at the end of that street that prevents anything further than what is currently there. What was built there was built probably to code at the particular time, or unknown when the street was built, how that was all put together. We don't have that information. Under today's rules, that would need to be there, correct, Chris, as part of the developmental build-out?
Yes,
one of
if
those
this were
two
built
would be-
today, it would be built to town standards and not like it is now. Now, any expansion other than what is shown could always be done at the discretion of the highway superintendent. You know, if they want to expand that for their own needs or to try to accommodate the resident, that's up to the highway superintendent. But I don't know in terms of your role as, you know, safety, what that would provide. That's up to you guys to decide. But, you know, highway can have at it, but in terms of, you know, trying to meet code, it doesn't work.
Does the tree show on that sketch?
No. And that's kind of where I left it with the resident. He was asking for more detailed engineering. You know, certainly if the highway department did want to take this on as a project and wanted engineering's help, we could conduct a survey and collect, you know, current edge of pavement, right away, any type of obstructions, trees, otherwise, to see what would work. But at this stage, you know, till we get some sort of commitment that the town is willing to do this, we're not going to spend resources in chasing something that may not ever occur.
I agree that I don't know that there's more that this board can do on this. We've reviewed it from a traffic safety standpoint, but without a natural plan for where a turnaround could be placed, given all of the right-of-way constraints, I think that I would make a motion to receive and file this. And perhaps there could be further conversation with the correct boards and departments for further investigation of opportunity.
Okay, so with that, there is a motion to receive and file. Is there a second?
Second.
So there's a second from Cynthia. Is there any further conversation? I will just bring up from my perspective on this, just adding to the conversation, is the town, Chris, the engineering department have looked at this. There is not an option to install a hammerhead into this area that currently meets town codes and standards. We as a board are restricted as to what we can do on this one, so there's really no further action that we can take. There's not a solution before us to take action and address this. And just want to add in, I'm also sitting here and a little bit torn on this, as we have the first agenda item and the residents that are still sitting here in the room, that we have one group here that we're talking about a sidewalk installation and kids walking to a school that is a mile away, and then we're talking, which would have a significant cost as well, which has probably numerous students potentially in that particular area. And then we have another area where we're looking at another significant cost, and we're talking about 50 feet. When you look at the resources, when you look at everything that comes together and balancing all of that, that would be, again, where I would move this one to a receive and file situation. So any other further comments from anybody else on the board? With that, I will ask all those in favor to receive and file.
Aye.
Opposed? So that would be motion carried 6-0. So with that, for the resident, just so that you are aware, this has been received and filed by this board, basically that there's no action that we can take. As Chris pointed out, you can continue to reach out to Highway Superintendent about thoughts if he would be willing to entertain the idea of extending that particular area as you're recommending doing. That's at the highway superintendent's purview, or you are always welcome to have further conversation with Council Member Zucala or other town council members on their idea of changing town code as to the regulations that are currently available for hammerhead installation. It's what's required within the town code. So with that, this item would be closed by this board, and we will move to item number 5, which is the next item that we have someone signed in for this evening.
Okay, so this is Eggert Road. I do not have a presentation prepared for this one, but I can show you some data and give you some background. Resident emailed the town and said, generally, listen, we've got some speeding issues on Eggert Road. Can you take a look at it? So we placed a counter, and instead of it just going into a dark hole, I wanted to bring you guys the data and show you what was collected, and also give the opportunity to the resident to see it and discuss it with you. So Eggert Road, and the section we're talking about is south of Maine, essentially between LeBron and Maine. So at the resident's request, we placed a counter at pole 1162. And we collected northbound and southbound vehicular traffic, both volume and speed. In the northbound direction, we had close to 6,000 vehicles with the 85th percentile speed of 40 miles per hour. Please note that the posted speed limit is 35.
Why isn't that on?
Yeah, I normally do put that on there, but I didn't do it on this time.
Some have it, some, I think the town roads we get it, the county we never get.
Okay, keep that in mind for future ones. And then on the southbound, 39 miles per hour, again, posted 35 miles per hour. This one's closer to 5,500 vehicles per day. So not, in terms of major arterials, this is probably a minor arterial. It is a county highway. Not too egregious in terms of speeds. I did provide this to the resident ahead of the meeting. But again, if you guys have any ideas or suggestions or had a chance to review this corridor, you are welcome. It is not our jurisdiction. It is the county's jurisdiction. I will tell you that this roadway condition is in fairly rough shape. So that may have slowed the vehicles down more than if it was a brand new road. That, I'll turn it over to the board.
Chris, can you just zoom down to this a little bit closer to the street?
Oh, yeah, sure. I think this is where the counter was, around here. So is this a double yellow barrier now? Is this a double yellow barrier? And maybe the resident knows. It's no longer a passing zone, right? So this is an older image. Actually, it's not too old.
Should be in the bottom corner.
It says 825. Was this just paved? Interesting. All right, board, if you want to.
Yeah, so with that, we have the resident this evening, Michelle, signed in this evening, if you'd like to come up and speak.
Hi, my name's Michelle Sefarati, and I live at 11 Norman Place. You can see the back of my house there, the side, the green one on the other side of the fence. So I live on the corner of Norman and Eggert. You can see there's a pretty narrow right-of-way, and the houses in this stretch are the setbacks are very small. I've been concerned about the speeds at night. I've lived there for 32 years, I believe. There's always been traffic, and at night in particular, when there's not a lot of traffic, rush hour traffic and things, the cars are going faster. I looked at the review that Chris sent me, and it seems that, yes, the majority of cars are going within 10 miles of the speed limit, but that's during those high traffic area at times when cars can't really go any faster. At night in particular, I can hear cars going by, and I know they're going over 50 miles an hour. I tallied the cars that are going between 46 and 65 miles an hour, and there were almost 300 a week. My house is very close to the street, and I have become increasingly concerned about the speed of traffic, and I have neighbors with young children who are really concerned because the right-of-way is so narrow. And about a month ago, there was an accident, and the car at the house behind me, the car hit a car stopped. I believe she was turning into her driveway and did not signal, but the car that hit her had gone around her on the left side into what would be oncoming traffic. There's no shoulder. It then proceeded to drive over 3 front lawns and then took out a front porch on the corner of University and Eggert. So it's ridiculous that cars are going almost 65 miles an hour on this stretch. And I talked to Chris about having the speed reduced 5 miles, and that might not be that likely, but what I would like to see is the speeds monitored by radar regularly. I know that streets like Gettsville Road, you constantly see a police officer on Meadow Stream, whether they're looking at the stop sign, stopping, or speed, but that is one that I see regularly. Millersport Highway is also 35 miles an hour. It's about 1.5 miles from this intersection, and it's a 5-lane road, and it's called a highway, and there's constantly speed radar there in the little plaza on Millersport tracking speed. So I would love to see a little bit more radar done just to kind of slow down the traffic, and hopefully, I don't even know if those speed monitoring signs really do reduce people's speed when you can see how fast you're going, but I'd like to see something done because it seems out of control. And it's a little scary to hear that traffic going by that quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item this evening? None being heard or seen. We will close the public comment period and open it up to the board for discussion. So this is one where we run into concerns with how we would refer this. When you look at that 85th percentile speed, oftentimes that tells you what the speed limit should be set on the street. So we kind of walk a little bit of a fine line on this one because the 85th percentile speed is coming back at 40 miles per hour. So referring this to county for review, they could come back and say, well, the speed limit shouldn't be 35 miles per hour. It should be 40 miles per hour, right? And they could make a move in that direction. So that's one thing that we do have to take into consideration as we look at this based on the speeds that we have on the street. With that being said, one of the calming devices that we have that is recommended at times is that you choke down the lanes of the road. There's other portions of Eggert Road where I think there's been consideration of giving it a road diet. I'm not sure. That's why I asked Chris to look down here at the road itself. If it is in rough shape and in area where it potentially needs to be milled and paved, or if it was recently paved and they put the center line down, if it is something that we could refer to Erie County for consideration of the addition of fog lines on that road. Looking at this, looking at the one car that was there, the lanes there do look a little bit wide, which gives you a sense that you can drive faster in a wide lane. So by adding the white fog line, you could narrow that lane down to a 12-foot width, and that in turn makes the car feel tighter on the road, which makes people drive a little bit slower. So just looking at that car, you can see how wide the lane is. So you could add a fog line down the side to choke down the lane, and that would force the cars more towards the middle of the road. You see the opposing traffic coming at you, and it just gives you a sense to drive slower. It's a proven thing that can be done to help slow speeds. So I don't know if that's something that we could refer to county on any project on this stretch for milling and repaving, or if it's a line that could be added the next time they paint that road. The other thing that I would say is that we have had other streets where we've put in the radar feedback signs, and I know there's been support from the town board and our current town supervisor to enhance funding for more of those signs where it's warranted for the installation of those. Those were installed on Park Lane, and they were also installed on Brompton and Mill. I believe this is potentially a street where if there was funding in the town and they were looking for additional places to install that, this might be an ideal street for one of those radar feedback signs to be installed. And lastly, third recommendation would be looking at the speeds that we have. We can refer this over to police for enforcement of the speed limit. However, again, looking at that street, one of the things that the police do need in order to be able to enforce the speeds is a spot for them to sit and shoot radar to be able to catch the car going. And really, there's not room on this particular street for them to do that of ease. They can sit on, yeah, they can sit on the side street and do the best that they can, but just looking at the dynamics of the road, there needs to be places for them to go and do that, which is why on Millersport Highway and other things you'd get there. Yeah, so
You said the evening hours seems to be the worst for the highest speeders. What time of evening would you say?
Yep, there's other things that take into consideration with that, but it's just the concern that you have when you ask for something where there's a speed study, that is something that they can come back with. We would hope in this instance they're not, that they wouldn't, but I think the other things that I don't know if there's others on this board that have similar feelings to me or would like to move forward with any of that, so I'll leave that to the board here to discuss and decide what we want to do from here.
I thought all
If
your
I lived there,
ideas
I
were
would
good.
not be advocating repaving the street. I'd leave it the way it is.
Rough roads slow cars down. They're like speed bumps.
I can see that, the presentation.
So, so I will, so that is one thing just to remember, that as they pave the road, that would be another reason to make the recommendations as they do that. Smooth roads tend to make cars go faster. So adding in those fog lines could be a way to help deter that. And if you're looking for an area where that fog line can help to deter that and make the road look narrower, I would recommend taking a ride out to New Road that they just completed all the construction out there. They actually widened that road from where it was. And then with doing that as well, they added the white fog lines down the side to choke down those lanes. So it created the areas on the side of the road. And you can see how when you're driving down that road, even though it is a wide road, it does give the feeling with those white lines of a more narrow road to help slow down the traffic, where if those lines weren't there, it would be a speed zone. Speedway. Yep. So with that, I would just make the motion here that we send a note to the Erie County Highway Department advising them and our recommendation, and ask that if that road is in schedule to be milled and paved or painted, that they investigate the addition of fog lines to the line to the road as a road traffic calming measure. We also have already referred to the police, and then so we'll make that first. Any further, is there a second to that?
A second.
So there's a second to that from Cynthia. Any further conversation? None being heard, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? So motion carried 6-0. And then with that, I would also just ask, is the board in favor of referring this? I don't know what we have to do on this one. For radar feedback signs for further investigation, if this would warrant or be applicable for radar feedback signs.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, and the town, at least I'm trying to push for, they they make radar feedback signs that are somewhere in between what we installed with on Park Club and like what the police put out for trailer, where it's a portable battery powered device that you can strap on a pole or a utility pole, where we can put it out there for 2 weeks continually operating. I've spoken to Highway Superintendent Steve Floss as well as Supervisor-elect Lavin to consider that expenditure. So that's something that would be handy in our toolkit just to put up. It also records traffic to see the effectiveness of if we should ever install a permanent radar feedback sign instead of us just trying to guess locations. So just know that that's happening in the background.
Okay, so then I guess we'll just hold on that one pending that work that's already being done by the town. And then just have this as an area that if that is purchased, that this would be an area to put it, to check it out. Okay, with that, any further conversations on item 5? None being heard, we'll close item number 5. We have nobody else signed in this evening, so with that, we would move to item number 1, Addison Avenue on the agenda for Addison Avenue.
Okay, so this is very similar to an item you reviewed in January 2025 on Arcade. Addison is the next street over, so I'll run through this. Addison received a call. They could not provide a correspondence, excuse me, for a no-through traffic sign on Addison. This is immediately parallel to Arcade. It cuts the corner between Millersport and Eggert. And like I mentioned, you guys have already suggested that a no-through traffic sign, which is a new sign that is allowed in the newest version of MUTCD, be tried out on that street on Arcade. We sent it to the county and they said, listen, it's your right of way on Arcade. You just put it in your right of way instead of Eggert Road right of way. Then I sent it to New York State DOT and they said, before you can install such a sign, you need to first pass a local law or town ordinance or resolution to allow for that sign. It's a regulatory sign. You can get a ticket for that. It's a white sign. So similar to, what we go through for no parking signs, stop signs, etc. So we were kind of internally holding this, given that feedback, to see if New York State was even going to allow this sign in the MUTCD supplement. So just to explain that, the feds come out with the MUTCD, and then the state says, okay, thanks feds, but we're going to make some changes. We don't like that in the state of New York. And they have been known to nix, eliminate, modify signs within that book, and that's what that supplement is for. To date, that supplement has not come out, and the DOT letter says it doesn't know when it's going to come out. They are working on it, but that could potentially eliminate that sign. I really don't know. So we have some decisions to make. Looking at this, I think maybe it wasn't such a great idea to recommend it on Arcade and not do Addison, because if you were to post that sign on Arcade, it would just move the problem to Addison more than it is. These are the volumes on both these roads going east and west. If you look at the street, it's only got a couple dozen houses. It shouldn't generate this amount of traffic. So we know cut-through traffic is occurring. I myself was traveling on this road and had to go somewhere on Eggert, and my GPS through Google took me down Addison. So we know Google Maps is funneling people through these neighborhoods, which can only be changed, kind of skipping around. Google will eliminate that if a law is passed and you can show them that there's signage that prohibits that type of movement. Like I said, it would require a town board resolution. And then finally, this is a question to you guys. Do you want to wait for the New York State supplement, or do you want to move forward with this pilot, determine the effectiveness? We have the pre-studies showing the volumes, we could post up the signs after passing a resolution, and then do a post study and see if those are signs that we are interested in using in the future.
So I'm just going to put Councilmember Zucala on the spot here. If the New York State hasn't moved to issue the supplement, would the town board consider or pass a resolution without the New York State supplement being issued? Or would you hold it at the town board level until that's done?
Well, remember, unless you can get this to me before the end of December, in January, we have a new town board, and I don't yet know how my new colleagues think. So it sounds like I'm brushing it off, but it depends on when you get it. I don't.
We have 2 meetings in December. I could get it to you before, at one of those meetings.
Okay.
December 1st, and I forget the other one, but yeah, it would, I have to put some thought into this. If it requires a public hearing or not, then it's definitely into the next year. Or if it's just a resolution, I may have to inquire with the town attorney.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's where I would. Right, so if the town board passes the town law in order to make the signs enforceable, and then the New York State supplement says that the sign can't be used, that would basically undo the law of the town because they can't use the sign. So we're kind of like, we're kind of stuck.
Probably have to have another action rescinding that resolution.
Rescinding that resolution. But in the meantime, it would allow us to post the sign, get some notification to Google to take that off the map and GPS guidance directing people down those streets. So with that, I'm in favor of making a recommendation to pilot this on these 2 streets to the town board and asking the town to take the actions required to create the local law allowing them to be installed.
If the board makes a recommendation, I will take, if this board makes a recommendation, I'll take it to the full board.
Okay, so I'll make the motion for that. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second from, is that Kara? Second from Kara. Any further conversation from anyone on the board? None being heard. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried 6-0. So that'll refer to town board to make the law allowing the pilot to be created.
Chairman, if I could just make a comment. Just any local law or ordinance that is passed, there's going to be have to be a very specific definition of what local traffic is. Does it only apply to the residents of that street are allowed on there, or if you live a block over? So it's going to be difficult language and very difficult from an enforcement standpoint to determine, who's actually in violation of the law. So just something to consider, Councilman, when you're drafting that, I guess.
Okay.
Thank you. So with that, we'll move to item number 2, Casey Road and Youngs Road intersection, a roundabout request.
Okay, item 2 is Casey Young's roundabout request. Here's the intersection. It is county intersection. Casey is a county road. Young's Road is a town road. And Young's Road is extended to neighborhood to the north. The resident is asking if the town would consider a roundabout. They justify this as saying it is not safe under the current 4-way stop signage with a flashing signal. It's a fairly large intersection with too much pavement, difficult for pedestrians to cross during the current configuration. And then they provided another example from another city for consideration, and that's this is what they provided us and said, can you do something like this? It's in your package. We then took that same image and overlaid it onto the existing right-of-way of Casey and Young's to see if it fits. You know, Casey, Young's is a fairly wide right-of-way, so yeah, it does fit there, but it doesn't exactly fit anywhere else. But, you know, that's not intended to fit everything. Other background, it is a county intersection, although we own and operate that flashing signal. Therefore, by agreement, we're responsible for the pavement markings. The town installed bike lanes in 2019. There are no pedestrian accommodations given the lack of sidewalk connectivity on the south side of Casey. Town approved development to the north, whereby extending Young's into the new residential subdivision. There isn't a lot of crashes here, 2 in the last 3 years. And in 2021, you guys looked at this intersection not for a roundabout, but to clean up that before mentioned wide pavement area, suggesting that the stop bars move closer to the intersection to avoid driver confusion. To date, that work is not yet complete. Engineering department conducted a brief review of the roundabout. The engineering department does not believe a roundabout is feasible given the available right-of-way being inadequate, and the existing roadway geometry would not allow for the necessary entry deflection to ensure safe operation. And ultimately, you know, this decision would fall on Erie County, even though it's a flashing signal. A modification on a county road such as that would fall on the county and not the town. This is your 2021 past recommendation. Again, moving those stop bars from what's now at 66 and 62 feet separation from the signal down to a 40, and that is allowed per the MUTCD. So again, just tightening that up so that cars are not stopping way back and then having to navigate turns, and it helps sight distance as well. And that's all I have for you.
So I just want to add to that we also did discuss this intersection earlier this year, I believe, over the course of the summer, because the highway department did pave Young's Road. And we also asked at that time if consideration could be given to choking down the intersection on Casey to get rid of the sea of asphalt and the double stacking of cars that happens. Highway did pave the road under the same configuration as you're seeing up there currently. I'll just say that we're looking at a roundabout, in my opinion, in this intersection. We don't have an accident history at this intersection. We're looking at it more from an aesthetic standpoint. If there was a concern regarding accident history, considering there's already a flashing red light there, we would probably take the action of first installing a full signalized intersection. I just don't feel a roundabout. First of all, it doesn't fit from engineering's recommendation, and I also don't feel that that would be the first step that we would take at this intersection. So I would move to ask Highway to first consider again helping to choke down that intersection as proposed with the relocation of stop bars. Anything that can be done to that intersection to help with that would be appreciated. But other than that, I would move to receive and file.
I will second that.
So second, Kara, any further conversation? None being heard, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion, all opposed? Motion carried 6-0. Item number 4 on the agenda was removed, taken off the agenda for this evening based on future development. Item number 5 we've already discussed, which takes us to item number 6, Casey Road for pedestrian safety concerns.
Resident couldn't be here tonight, so she asked that I prepare in her absence all of her concerns that were written. So this one might be a little lengthy, but we'll get through. So the resident is requesting on Casey that additional pedestrian safety and crossing concerns on the east and north side between Dodge and Pine Lake essentially asking for a sidewalk and crossing, established crossing. So this is the area of concern, again, between Pine Lake and Dodge on the east side. Currently, there is no crosswalk. Currently, there is no crossing. Some background for this area. In 2019, the town was awarded a TAP project to complete a sidewalk as well as bike lanes on Casey Road. That project was completed and was a success, with the idea that the town's goal is to try to get a sidewalk on Casey from one end to the other, at least on one side. The second phase is currently under design. We are going to go out for bid in January 2026 to complete the rest from Paradise to Transit Road. That is going to happen on the south side. So there is part of that phase one has an RRFB, rectangular rapid flashing beacon, on the Casey Road to allow for the north sidewalk connectivity to the south sidewalk to ultimately get to the school, obviously for the safe passage of school children to and from school. I will note that there is a sidewalk on the west side of Casey Road immediately adjacent to the school and wraps around on Dodge. Kind of already covered that. Let's go over the resident concerns. There's not a public sidewalk on the east side. There are no crosswalks in this immediate area. Residents and school children who live on this east side must walk past the school to then access the Casey Road crossing that's been established, again without sidewalks. This is about 4 times farther than if they were to just cross the road. The resident reports that there are repeated near misses involving students crossing Casey in this immediate area that do not travel to the RRFB. Drivers exiting the school parking lot often fail to yield or notice pedestrians due to sight distance and distraction. Crossing guard is stationed beyond the main pedestrian desire line. That's the other one that we were talking about, leaving a gap in the pedestrian network near the bus loop entrance. The children that do dare to cross are playing a game of Frogger, particularly dangerous when school bus drivers wave children across and drivers do not stop. Residents and school staff have expressed shared concern about student safety in this area. The resident request is conduct an immediate safety assessment of the section of Casey Road and Casey Dodge Road connection and evaluate feasibility and sustainable measures like an RFB signage or crosswalk to improve visibility and safety for students crossing to school. Here are the figures that she provided. These are also in your package. This one just shows what I've already kind of explained. Sidewalk on the west, not on the east. This one shows that if there were a crossing, the distance from her house to the school would be a lot shorter than if you were to go all the way around to utilize the existing RRFB beacon. Finally, pedestrian crashes as well as bike crashes in this area are 0 in the past 6 years. And the engineering department review of this, specific to the sidewalk, the engineering department says they're not certain that a public sidewalk is even able to be constructed given the limited right-of-way, utility poles, and drainage in this area where the sidewalk would be installed. They also identified that there are other residential portions of Casey Road that does not have a public sidewalk along frontages and has them across the street, similar to this location, but though it does acknowledge that these other locations are not directly across from a school. And then finally, a further review of constructability would happen if the resident were to submit a sidewalk installation request formally. Specific to the crossing, that requires sidewalks on both sides, as you know, for a road that is 35 miles per hour with 8,000 vehicles, which this one is. Federal Highway Administration discourages the use of a mid-block crosswalk without a pedestrian beacon. So really an option just to throw in painted crosswalk is not an option, given the volume and speeds. The beacon would require 20 pedestrians per hour in any 1 hour. It is unlikely, although not counted, that this location would meet that threshold. This is further complicated with a nearby curve and limited sight distance. I think the resident even mentions that there are a lot of different conflict points with the school, driveway, bus loops, parent drop-off, pickup, add to the level of concern in this area. So specific to if where to put the RFB, you'd have to put it about the same distance as the other one, you know, from that curve. With that, I'll pass it over to the board.
Chris, did we have this a couple of years ago?
I don't recall. I don't recall.
I recall, reason there's no, sidewalk on the east side, Casey, there is because of a culvert or a ditch. I mean, I drove by there, that I see a culvert on the, see a ditch on the west side, but not on the east side.
Yeah, I took a look at it and I thought I saw like a swale and some drainage catch basins, but thank you. But I didn't see, you know,
Not very
any
drastic.
major ditch.
Right, there's nothing on the east side visible.
Like I said, it's you know, utility poles,
No, but there's one on the other side. You'd have to cross.
like right
Yeah,
these
Yeah,
culverts, yeah.
all the way.
And this,
Jump across that thing.
Yeah.
yeah, and this sidewalk on the west side, this is on school property. Because I did this one at the very north end. That little piece. So this is the property line essentially where that fence is. And you can essentially mimic that on the other side because it's a 49.5-foot right of way. So I'm going to guess this, you know, probably here. It's tight. I mean, here's those drainage structures. In review of our files, there is, the area was a subdivision, a 12-lot subdivision back in 1980. At that time, the town did not require sidewalks. I don't know the history of that. That's kind of the background on those lots. There's about, realistically, 14 to 16 houses that would utilize a crosswalk in that area. How many of those actually have school children and are crossing? Maybe a handful, you know.
You're building sidewalks all over the place, but you've got these gaps around school buildings, school neighborhoods. Significant gaps.
So what would you recommend, Dan?
Sidewalks.
To where?
Complete the sidewalk on Casey Road.
Okay, where does that go?
Dodge.
Okay, so if you live here, are you gonna go all the way up to Dodge to then cross safely to go to the school, or the opposite direction? That's what makes this difficult is human behavior. They're not gonna walk that extra distance to a safe crossing location to get to school across the street. That's why they're asking for a crosswalk.
I agree. I think you can always draw any line where it's going to be closer from your house than the nearest sidewalk, and they're just, I agree. Yeah.
And where would you put in the RFB, and where would you put the RFB in front of the school crossing with 3 different driveways right there and the turn?
Yeah.
Which is the main driveway? That
You would have to go north of the driveways. So there's no safe place to put it.
And on top of this was all contemplated when we did the huge Casey.
Yeah, initially, I'll tell you, the town's original application showed a sidewalk going to this corner and crossing right at the curve. And when we entered final design and met with the county, they said absolutely not. You're not putting a beacon right at the middle of a curve. So they forced us to put it out here. The reason being is we didn't wrap it all the way around here because, we thought people were just going to not use the beacon. We wanted to have them cross before you got to the school. So it wasn't even in the picture to have it go past the school. So this was the decided upon location, primarily by the county.
I would refer the resident to the sidewalk application for consideration from the technical review, same as the first group, to see if there's any feasibility of installing sidewalks in that area. If sidewalks were to be installed, then we could consider an area for the installation of a sidewalk in the future. Right now, there's no place to even put it because there's no sidewalks on the south side. So, I'm sorry, on the east side. So before we could even consider it, we need sidewalks on the east side of the street. So I would move to, make the recommendation to the resident to complete the sidewalk application for consideration and receive and file this item until such time sidewalks exist for a crossing to be installed.
Is that a formal motion?
That'd be a formal motion to receive and file until that time, so yes.
Second it.
So second from Cynthia. Any further discussion? None being heard, all in favor? Aye. Motion carried 6-0. With that, that closes the new business section of the agenda. We will move to ask if there's any other items that required immediate attention to be brought forward by this board as a new business item. No items
Chairman,
being-
I have one. And it does need a vote, so glad it's not 9 yet. We have a new subdivision being constructed. It's called Miller's Crossing. And for those new members who haven't been through this, when new subdivisions are installed, we are responsible to install stop signs, and that requires you guys to review and suggest stop signs. You already did this part where there's private roads, but we never were able to do this intersection, which is Avalon Meadows and Stream Sound Court. So tonight, I just want you to look at this intersection and tell me where you recommend traffic control.
Right where your mouse is, where your hand is.
That was easy enough. Do I have a motion?
Motion from Kara, I'll second for installation. Well, hold on a second, Chris.
Say northwest corner.
So I'm going to say first, I'm going to make a motion to add this to the agenda for this evening. Is there a second to add this to the agenda? So a second from Cynthia to add to the agenda. All in favor, or further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion carried 6-0 to add to the agenda. Then there's a motion from Kara for installation of a stop sign at the northwest corner, as indicated by Chris's hand on the screen. And there is a second to that motion from Cynthia. Did you make the second? Oh, I made the motion. I made the second to that one. So then there's a second by me for that item. Is there any further discussion? None being heard. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carried 6-0.
Okay, that's all I have.
Any other new business to be brought before the board? None being heard, we will close the new business section and move to the old business section. Item A, bike path crossing at North Forest. Still holding that, Chris, to get information together on the pedestrian counts. I believe you said that was completed, but we don't have the full report on that yet, so we'll hold that till December.
Yes.
B, Maple Road, Old Lime, Maple West, that is still being held as engineering is completing their study on that intersection, so we will continue to hold B, potentially.
Remember Dan Ryder visited that location. His email's in the package. Dan, do you want to go over that at all?
Could you put it up on a screen?
Yep.
Can you talk into the mic so the screen picks you up?
this is Maple West School and the intersection with Maple Road where we have ongoing problems with left-hand turns. And I could call this up on Google and see this really big parking area here. And I said, geez, what do they need all that for? Well, I found out. I went back in there. I got there at 8 o'clock one morning and I observed the buses and cars entering and exiting and dropping kids off from 8 to 9 o'clock in the morning. And I was parked center lot, upper right-hand corner. The next lot, right there. Okay. And I thought that was pretty good. I could see the whole place. I couldn't really see the intersection of Maple Road. I wanted to catch that too, but there were air conditioning units and big crates piled up right there on the grassy knoll, and I couldn't see through them. So anyways, I watched the traffic patterns of the cars and the buses. Okay. The parking area to the left or the west is for teachers and staff, I guess, but that's also where parents drive through there. It's like a maze to drop their kids off, okay, from cars. Okay, that is packed, and it's packed on the entrance road. And I couldn't see how far back towards Maple it went, but that road is well utilized with parent drop-off. The center is used for buses. There's plenty of room. In my opinion, there aren't that many kids on a bus. Keep in mind that a car carries 16-foot car carries one passenger, and a 40-foot bus has a capacity of 71 students. So you got plenty of capacity here to service the school. The question is, what do you do with cars or buses? Okay. And any study you're going to do on the intersection of Maple Road and this entranceway, I think you need to do a study of what's going on in here. And probably the best way to do that is get a drone that would shoot the whole site and fly over it for an hour. See what it looks like. There's a lot going on here. And it is affecting the intersection. This traffic was backed up on my way out at 9 o'clock. Students are all dropped off at 8:59. Okay, and but I was in a traffic jam trying to get out of the lot for a while. It took me 5 minutes to get out of the parking lot on the road. That's about it. Any questions?
Nope, no questions for me. Any other questions from anybody else?
So just to let you know, a RFP was sent out and we've selected an engineer. That engineer has been approved and we're just waiting for the supervisor to sign the contract. Inside that scope was no elaborate review of what's going on internal to what Dan was just talking about. Will they make observations? Sure, but they're going to be strictly spending time at the intersection itself.
And the inner circulation there, Chris, would probably be out of our scope anyway, because that's school district property, not town property, correct?
Yes.
Well, they can't take the cars fast enough to prevent queuing on the entrance road.
Right.
Correct.
You know, in our initial kickoff meeting, I will bring up your concerns, just so they're aware of them, and we'll go from there. Yeah, I mean, that was always our concern. You put in the arrow when there's a big platoon of cars turning left all at once, and the internal workings cannot accommodate the amount of vehicles going in there all at once. You heard from Councilmember Marinucci that if we took care of the signal improvements, she would take care of the mess on the inside.
But you're not going to do much with Maple Road.
And we will continue to spend money to buy buses for schools, to spend money to put signals at intersections for parents to still drive their kids, no matter what we do.
That is the problem.
All right, so we will continue to hold item B until we get the recommendations back from the engineering study to be conducted. With that, we'll close item B for tonight and we'll move to item C, Heim Road, parking at South Wedge for site distance.
So we went out there on a Friday and took some pictures. They're in your package. I'll show them up on the screen. I don't have any elaborate presentation. Here it is looking northeasterly. And then you have to creep up to see any type of vehicles coming down Heim. So here's way creeped up. Your nose is kind of already in a lane at that point. Still difficult to see. In the other direction, similar situation. This is all on a Friday, 2 p.m. We did some measurements, although it was difficult to do a full site distance analysis. We think 100 feet, 4 cars would certainly help the situation here, but by no means are you, we're telling you to do that as a recommendation. That was just our initial thought out there.
That's signed right now? Parking ends or begins?
Nope, there's no signs at all on the southeast side. I think that's the east side. Yeah, there's no signage at all.
So I'll make a motion for installation of no parking 100 feet on at the south side.
It goes at a diagonal, Chairman, so I think we're calling this the east side, so this would be the northeast.
So 100 feet on the northeast of South Wedge and 100 feet on the southeast of South Wedge. Installation of no parking 100 feet. Was there a second?
Where's the 100 feet measured from, Chris?
It's curb line.
So there's a motion for the 100 feet. Is there a second?
Yep.
Second from Max. Okay, so now we can have further conversation.
So the question was posed, where would the 100 feet be measured from? It is curb line. So that's how I said 4 cars, because each car is approximately 20 feet. So another 20 to kind of get to the curb line.
So you'd be somewhere probably behind the second or third car that's currently in that line.
Yes.
And on that one, you're
It's like
probably
here.
up about,
We wheeled it and it got to us in got to the 4th car.
any further conversations? All in favor of the motion for 100 feet? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried 6-0.
Can get a clarification on that's all hours, all days?
Yes.
Okay.
With that, any other old business to bring before the board or question? None being heard, we will close the old business and move to site plans and thank our liaisons for their participation this evening. Scott, you're up.